Hello, everyone, and welcome into this episode of the SPYPOINT podcast. I'm your host, Trent Marsh, joined today by, I'd say good friend. I'm not sure if he'd agree or not, but I'm going to go ahead and say good friend, Dustin Sanchez from Real Avid. Wanted to have him on here for a while. Now we're kind of hitting this summer lull and we're kind of between seasons. I thought it'd be a good time to get Dustin on here, talk about some competitive shooting and some shooting tips and some gunsmithing tips. So Dustin, welcome. Glad to have you. Glad we were finally able to make it work. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about what it is you do and how you got here?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on here. And I consider you a good friend, so we'll let that one go. Yeah, you're good. I guess I'm the marketing manager at Real Avid. So I kind of, here at Real Avid, we make tools for anybody who wants to build their gun or do any type of maintenance on their firearm, as far as, like doing cleaning, all that good stuff there. But I actually got into the industry over a decade ago. And, you said you're in between seasons. For me, I'm in the heart of my season right now for competitive shooting. So I fly out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to go shoot a match in New Mexico and then come back. And I think I still have 9 matches on my schedule for the year. So I'm still moving. But I started shooting competitively about 12 years ago. Just kind of got into 3-gun first. A good friend of mine, Nathan Payne, his dad, Brian Payne, we were kind of doing some MMA fighting and we both made some career changes in our life. And at that time, they're like, hey, doing MMA probably isn't the best thing to be doing for your career path. So you need to find something where when you show up to work or whatever it is you're doing, you don't have a black eye or a bunch of bruises on you, look like you just got into a bar fight. And that's because I wasn't good at it. So I took a lot of punches. The guys that are good at it, they look fine. But
Right.
so I grew up in Texas. So naturally, growing up in Texas, growing up in the country, I just shot guns all the time.
Right.
Wasn't good at it. I considered myself to be good, but it wasn't until I went and started training for this first competition, this 3-gun match, that I realized there was a whole lot to learn. And being a very competitive person, once I start something, it's more like having a very addictive personality, right? Like once you start something, you do full send, and I've been doing full send for like 12 years now. And I transitioned from 3-gun into long-range shooting at this point in my career. I still dabble around in a little USPSA, IDPA. I keep telling everybody I'm going to shoot a little 3-gun next season. Probably not going to happen. I'm over the whole shotgun phase in my life. I never know. I have friends that do the tactical games, and we run up here. My business partner, I have my own business outside of here. A business partner and we run the local tactical game skirmishes up here. Mm-hmm. And so every now, I'll do some of those drills and work with people on AR and pistol. And I look at, every time I open up my safe, I look at my competition shotgun like I'm going to do something with it. But that's about as far as it goes right now.
Uh-huh.
I mainly focus on these guys right here at this moment. That's kind of where my passion is.
So then what is your competition rig right now? What are you shooting?
Yeah. So this year, primary, I'm shooting secondary. So I'm going to shoot a lot of team matches. And my partner, we're both sponsored by JP Rifles. And my partner, he wanted to do a bolt gun in a 6.5 Creedmoor. So the secondary shooter had to have a 223 or a 308. So with JP, I've been with JP for a while. I've actually built rifles for JP for a couple of years before I moved into marketing. And when I was there, I was known for shooting a dual charging rifle. So this rifle right here is a PSC 21. And before this rifle, I've got it up there, was a PSC 11. So it's dual charging. So you got a top charger, but I also have a side charger. So whenever I decided I was going to shoot a 223, I wanted to do a gas gun since I'm with JP. And this was a pre-production PSC 21 dual action. It's a 20-inch 223 barrel. This is just kind of my baby. I'm running a Vortex Strike Eagle 5-25. Last year I ran a bolt gun and a 6 Creedmoor, and that ran a 4.5-27 Razor. But I was going to play with it this weekend. I realized I shot out the barrel on that guy, so made a last-minute change and paid $60 in overnight fees to have some ammo shipped here to be here today. So after this, I'm going to the range to just confirm 0, and then we're flying to New Mexico. So
Nice.
yeah, this is my rig this year. I've shot out to about 900 yards with it this year, and my best friend and I, not to brag or anything, but we did qualify for nationals in the Vortex Sniper Challenge. So figured just keep shooting this guy and get more rounds through it before we go nationals.
Yeah, most folks listening know I've got a little bit of history with optics and that Vortex. I've got a Strike Eagle on one of my pieces too, and that regardless of the magnification they use, that's a great platform. Love that Strike Eagle platform.
Yeah, I'm naturally I run a lot of razors. One of the issues I run into is that when people are asking me like, hey, what optic are you using and what optic do you run? I typically run in a razor. When you get into the razor line, you start to get to around guys that either A, it's not in their budget, or B, they don't want that to be in their budget, right? And so the Strike Eagle is something that anybody can get into at a really good price. It's below $1,000. It's $525 first focal plane, and it parallaxes down to I believe 15 yards. So if you want to shoot 22 with it, like NRL 22, or you just want to have a good squirrel rifle that's got some nice range on it, that guy comes in great. So my whole goal was to just show people like you don't have to have the best optic on the market to be able to go out and compete at a high level. At the end of the day, you've got to have fundamentals in a rifle that runs. If you can get those two things down, then you can take an optic like the Strike Eagle, and not that it's not a good optic, it is, but it's budget friendly that anybody can get into it and go have fun.
Yeah, no, I think that's true of gear in general. I mean, we've all been at the range and seen the guy walk in with a $2,500 custom rifle and a $2,500 scope, and can't hit a broadside of a barn. It just somebody that knows what they're doing with mediocre equipment can do a lot more work than the guy that just went out and spent a bunch of money and bought top end gear. The gear's only going to get you so far. So, and especially on optics, as long as optics have just come so far. I say in the last 25 years, but then I realize how old I am and how long I've been in the industry, and I have to back that up. Like the last 40 years, optics have come so far. It's getting tougher and tougher to, they used to always say that you should spend as much on your scope as you spend on your rifle, and you certainly still can, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what you get, the value that you get anymore, if you're dealing with a reputable brand, there's just so many options in that. I call it just the consumer price level, that sub $1,000 level, that you're going to get a lot of the performance. And no, it's not going to have some of the bells and whistles, but just for mounting it up and going and shooting, if you know how to shoot, that scope will not be the weak link. No way that's the case.
No, there's so many other factors that go into it. And a lot of times I see, and especially with hunting, I do a lot of hunting as well. I mean, primarily I shoot competition, but I will go out, I'll do hunting. Like I said, I grew up doing that. And the biggest thing I see there is that ultimately a guy or female, they really don't understand their setup, from the rifle to the ammunition to the optic. They struggle a little bit with just trying to put all that in. They don't put all the time and effort they should into that particular setup. And that's usually when you see some of these people have issues. So really what I'm trying to do is, with this, is really talk to people about shooting. And, some people look at long range, especially in hunting, as 200 yards. Then you have other people that shoot out to 500 yards. But let's say, where I'm at, a lot of guys like 200 yard shots pushing it. And I'm like, in all reality, if you understand what your firearm is doing and you actually run it out to 200, 300 yards before you go hunting, you should never have an issue with a miss on an animal when you're out hunting.
No, I completely. Well, and you said something that made I chuckled inside. The idea of shooting a barrel out is something that most people will never, ever in their life accomplish. So how many rounds do you have through that setup?
Through the 6 Creedmoor, I have, so I did it on Sunday because I tested it. On Sunday, I was close to 1,400 rounds. I was sitting around 1,350. So yeah, that barrel is known to be shot out around 1,300 rounds to 1,500 rounds. The match I'm going to only needed like 180 rounds. So I was hoping I still had a little bit in there, but I didn't. So yeah, I shot that out in 1 year. I would have shot that out faster, but I decided to play around with the 223. But yeah, it happens. You know, a lot of guys I know, they're shooting barrels out. It is what it is. If a guy's been shooting a 243 long enough, he has shot that barrel out, because the 243 and a 6 Creedmoor are essentially the same thing. So, you know, at the end of the day, a guy that, you know, a lot of guys I know started out in a 243, they probably ran that for 10 years, and they're probably, you know, if they put in there a lot of rounds, they went to the range and shot it a lot, their barrel is getting close to being shot out.
And that's one of those things, like I said, when you're two different worlds when you're talking competitive shooters and when you're talking hunters, because so many, you know, and I mean, I'm no different. I've got several guns that are primarily hunting rifles, and once they are sighted in, they go back into the safe and they set, and you get verified every once in a while, and you pull them out a couple times a year just to, you know, to run them and clean them. And you know, there's other guns that get run a lot more than those, but you know, just the normal guy going hunting and his 30-30 or his bolt action 308, it's going to take him 30 years to run 1,000 rounds of ammo through that, just because it's not getting used that way.
And I work with a lot of hunters here, and you know, it's different because I'll be like, you know, I'm going to do a barrel break-in, and in that barrel break-in, I'm going to put roughly 100 rounds to that rifle in one range day. Right. And these guys are like, 100, you're going to put 100 rounds through that? I'm like, yep. And they're like, well, that's because that's a cheap caliber. You can do that. And I'm like, my ammo I shoot through this 223 behind me is $1.60 a round, and it's a 223. You know, I'm like, that's not a cheap round to be shooting 100 rounds down range. That's over $100 a day. Right. You know, like I'm putting it in there, but for me, that's all of the process I want to go through. I want to make sure that this barrel will last as long as it can, shooting the best groups possible. I have guys here that bought brand new deer hunting rifles last year, and they put like 5 rounds through it. You know, they were like, oh yeah, I got it zeroed in like 5 rounds. I'm good to go. And I'm like, I want to go shoot that rifle and see like your zero compared to my zero. And that's not talking crap. Right. You know, that I'm not trying to talk crap about hunters. It's just, there's a difference.
Hunting accuracy and competition accuracy are two very different things. You know, they just, their target, you're shooting a whitetail, your target is 6-8 inches, zeroed on 6-8 inches. That's pretty easy to do again. And it's again, because some of my history is in optics. People always think they're going to shoot further than they really are. And the vast majority, even with rifles, the vast majority of shots, if you're east of the Mississippi, it's going to be under 100 yards. It just, you know, you got guys that there's places in the South where you're sitting power lines, or there's big ag fields or whatever, but guys are never shooting as far as they think they need to anticipate for. And it's one of those things that we've seen, you know, on the archery side, we've seen the idea of long range practice really get popular, but it doesn't seem like it's really trickled over to the gun hunting side of, you know, I like to be able to stretch out 2 or 3 times a year and get out pushing that 500 range, 500 yard mark, just more than anything to prove to myself that I shouldn't be doing it all that often. I'm a pretty good shot, but you know, I don't like shooting a 4.5 to 5 inch group at 500 yards. Like I would like to be shooting better than that, but that's the stuff that I'm running for hunting, because I'm in Northeast Indiana, and I cannot think of any property that I hunt where I would even be able to see 250 yards. Yeah. Everything's dead hold zeroed. Like it's just going to be what it's going to be. So there's no real reason to do it.
My hunting rifle, and I change my hunting rifle every year, depending on how I feel. I don't buy a new one. I just grab a different gun out of the store. I'm like, all right, let's run this one. And when I do that, my zero on there is 25 yard zero. Yep. Right. And that's it. I run 25 yard zero, and then I'll shoot it out to 100. But I know that my range is 25 to 70 yards. Yeah. So that's really what I focus in on. And I'll probably put 30 rounds down in between those two ranges, those two distances, just to really understand what my rifle's doing, where it's going, and I call it a day. Like I said, I go one step farther, and that's just that whole competition shooting. Yep. You know, we're always trying to make sure we know everything's going on. And though I know I don't need that, it's still just that practice that I put into anytime I go to zero rifle, I do the same regimen on whatever I'm doing. So like Sunday I confirmed 0 at 100. And then I shot still at 200, 300, and 400. And I took 5 shots at 400 and noticed all 5 shots were about 1.5 inches higher than what my dope should have been. So I dialed it down 1, shot 5 more shots, and they were all dead center. So then I actually changed what my 100-yard 0 was to be with what my 400-yard 0 should be, because just the ballistics and everything, you know,
Right.
your wind speed and your BC, they're all different at about 400. So I trued my rifle up at 400. So at 100, I'm a little bit off of an actual true 0, but it's the difference in what I'm trying to shoot for.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've kind of got into some of it, and obviously some of that was probably over, you know, some guys just aren't going to shoot like that. But for the guys or gals that they want to not necessarily get to 400 and 500 yards, but they just want to tighten up those groups at 150, 200, 250, short of trigger time. And I'm going to re-ask my own question, because lots of people go shooting, they don't go training. So what can they do to not just shoot, but to actually train themselves to be a better shot at those longer distances? What are some of the quickest wins that they can do to get better at those distances?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The biggest thing is understanding your rifle, or your pistol, depending on what you want to do. But with a rifle, it's a dry fire. If you could dry fire your rifle at home, that is huge, because getting to understand where that trigger breaks, right? When I'm on there and I'm into that trigger and I'm pulling, I want to be surprised every time, but I also want to understand that when I'm on it, that I don't just jerk the trigger, right? I want to push to hit that wall and then start to pull through that wall, right? And it goes off, but I need to understand what that trigger does. And by doing that, it's putting time at home doing dry fire. The next thing I see is going to be people having positional, like doing positional type work. So somebody's going to go to the range, they're going to go prone, and they're going to shoot their rifle. But when they actually go to, go hunting, they're up in a deer stand. And now their position is completely different. They never shot, or they haven't shot from this position in a long time. Very uncomfortable. They're not in a good spot. So it comes down to just getting in a couple different positions when you're at the range. Try to replicate the stand, like if you're in the deer stand, try to replicate that deer stand the best way you can. I'm a firm believer in having a good bipod. I see a lot of people that will shoot from a bipod, even at the range, if they just want to clean up their groups. Their bipod is, it's wiggling a lot. They're not preloading. Nothing is, I've got a whole list here, but I see people get behind their rifle and they're like this, right? When in reality, even shooting long range, you want your rifle to be as square as your body as possible. So even if you're laying prone, you want to be square behind your rifle, right? So I'm prone, my rifle is still lined up right with my shoulder. My feet aren't kicked out behind me. All those little things like that, from the dry fire and understanding your trigger to getting behind the rifle properly, getting your eye box set up good, those will all lead to even better shots. If you have parallax on your optic, then you actually need to set your parallax to when you're zero, right? So if I zero at 100 yards, I need to mess with my parallax on my optic and make sure that nothing on that target is blurry. Everything is nice and clear. Once everything is nice and clear, then I'm going to zero my rifle at that parallax level. So if it's at 50, I want my parallax around 50. If I'm at 100, I want it dialed in at 100. So what that does is now when I go out to shoot, let's say I'm going to shoot 500 yards and I want a tighter group, and I dial that parallax to 500, but I get it nice and crisp, then I know my rifle will be zero. A lot of people don't understand if the parallax is off and when you start messing with that, shooting out to that distance, you can start missing your target. Your groups will open up because it's not zero to the actual optic per se.
Well, not only that, but if you're going to move, same with your ocular, you move the ocular or you move your parallax, you've changed something. All of those things have to be, we can go down an optics rabbit hole pretty quick, but the number of people that don't understand what the parallax is for, and then don't understand that once that's moved, if you zeroed at 100 and you shoot at 100 and then you move your parallax, it's not zeroed anymore. Parallax is complicated. And like I said, for the average hunter, it really doesn't make enough of a difference. When you get into competitive shooting, though, that's where it's really going to show up, no doubt.
Now, I would say a lot of these people are shooting like a 301 mag. That's going to be expensive to go out and practice. So like right now, you see a lot of people, Bergara's done it, Ruger's done it. They're putting out 22 bolt guns, right? That are in a chassis, or they look just like that Bergara behind me. They're sitting in the same stock as that. Getting a 22 that you can train with, you don't have to put the same optic on there, just put an optic that's similar and just go outside, put some rounds through the 22 and start trying to tighten up that group on that 22 by, just getting behind the shooting. You're going to see that anytime you put practice into that platform, it's going to transition into all the other platforms.
Yep.
So it's just, it really is getting out there and verifying your dry fires through live fire or validating.
Have you ever messed around with the air rifles much for that, as opposed to a 22?
I have not. I've been looking into the air rifles, but
do it.
I'm not looking at,
do it.
Hold up, because the air rifles I'm looking at are like $4,000. Right?
No, I get it. But even though the Springer types, like a good quality Springer, and again, kind of goes back to, obviously you are full send competitive dude, so you're looking at the pre-charged pneumatics and some of those. But even those Springers, just the repetition that exists. Even I've got a 22 caliber Hotson from several years ago that at 20 yards, I can put a 22 caliber pellet through a 25 caliber hole. The gun is capable of doing that repetitively.
Nice.
So it is really easy. If I start jerking the trigger, it shows up. If I start peeking, it shows up. And I can do that on a 10, 15, 20 yard range. And, like I said, 22s are great, but even 22 ammo, shoot, to try to go find it now at 10, 12, 15 cents a round is really tough. It wasn't that long ago. That's what we were paying for 9mm. So to be able to, it's something I've talked about for quite a few years, is just once I saw how accurate even a relatively, not talking Daisy Red Ryder, not talking that pump BB gun that we all grew up with, but the adult precision air rifle market is a huge untapped resource for people that want to get better at shooting, because the guns are capable of such accuracy that it will show you where your flaws are quick, fast, and in a hurry. It's
that market is getting more popular too.
100%. Absolutely is. And it's something, like I said, it's fun because you can just send them, and you know that it's repetitive, it's repeatable, and it's the gun is going to do what the gun's supposed to do. If there's something going wrong when you're shooting a legit air rifle, the problem lies with the shooter, and you can clean up a lot, especially on that trigger pull. Because like, I think mine, I want to say the trigger pull on mine is set at like 1 pound, 4 ounces or something. Like, it's crazy light, but again, if you're wanting to focus on not jerk, if you jerk a 1 pound, 4 ounce trigger, good luck. Like, you have to work on that creep.
And that comes back to just doing dry fire. I mean, really sitting there doing your dry fire. And when I say getting to learn your trigger, it's so you don't jerk it. It's so you understand the entire process as you're pulling through that. You just need to understand the entire process of what your trigger does, whether 2-stage or single stage. You just need to understand it. A lot of times too, though, is like triggers can be broken in, and by breaking a trigger in, it's doing dry fire. Right? If I continuously do dry fire, I'm gonna start to break that trigger in, where factory, let's say on an AR, factory trigger can be anywhere from 2.5 to 3 pound trigger. But as I continuously do dry fire, I'm going to drop it down closer to a 2 pound trigger, which makes a huge difference in shooting. So dry fire is huge, but it's interesting you brought up peeking, because dude, I see everybody peek on a pistol, shotgun, in shooting a rifle, and they don't understand that they're doing it. And I'm like, you're peeking. No, I'm not. And I'm like, look, you pull that trigger and you're automatically picking your head up to see where you hit. You need to follow that through. On a rifle though, like on a bigger caliber, moving back, like especially on a bigger caliber, moving a little slower, if you don't peek and you pull that trigger and you watch it through the optic, you can actually watch the vapor trail all the way into the target. And that vapor trail right there, if you miss, that vapor trail will tell you exactly where you missed. You missed to the right, and you'll be able to tell, like, hey, that was the wind that blew me. I've got a little bit more wind out there. Now we're getting into farther distances, but I was watching vapor trail at 200 yards on Sunday out of my 223. So
every round is a tracer round if you're shooting right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That was really fun. The first time I did a lot of that, did a prairie dog shoot out in Montana. And of course, you know, when it's 92 degrees in the middle of July, like vapor trail's a lot easier to see, especially when we were 300 to 500 yards pretty regularly. And God, that just, the amount of fun that is just beyond words. If you've never gone and done a prairie dog shoot, they're just vile little creatures tearing up the ground. So you're doing God's work by going out there and putting a hurt on them. But again, if you want to see how good or how ungood you are, it shows it off really quick, what you can do and what you can't. So that was a lot on long range. What about, and I'm guessing there's a lot of crossover, but what about for the guys that want to get a little better at the close quarter stuff? You know, what kind of advice for them?
Close quarter is going to be a lot of, well, you know, it depends if we're going rifle or we're going into pistol, but it's the same thing. It's going to start with dry fire, making sure you have the proper fundamentals. You know, and there used to be a saying that, well, it's still out there. I see a lot of people say it, that practice makes perfect. And we have found in competition shooting that practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Because I can practice all day long, but if I'm doing sloppy fundamentals or I'm practicing, you know, the wrong grip when I punch out on my pistol or get on my rifle or even my trigger press, if it's not the proper fundamentals, not the perfect fundamentals, then when I go to the range, then I'm going to see that everything that I did in dry fire, or even if I'm doing live fire and it's not the proper fundamentals, right, not perfect practice, it's going to put in bad habits that will ultimately just drive me to be an even worse shooter. So there is that caveat of practice makes perfect, but it's got to be perfect practice. So dry fire is huge. Getting out there, but making sure that your fundamentals are strong the entire time you're doing your dry fire. So when I get into an AR, I do a lot of stuff of getting to understand the AR. I play with ARs every day. So for me to understand what the AR does, what it's capable of doing is different than somebody just got into one. But dry fire at home, so no mags, no ammo around you, and just start with racking it and, you know, getting into the trigger, punching out, you know, transitioning from target to target. Those are all going to be huge. And then you can move into live fire where you're transitioning from target to target. Once you've got that down, now we're going to start adding movement in. But a lot of that is, you know, I'll go to the range. I can be at the range for 2 hours and only put 100 rounds on range. And that's not because I'm just like, boom, 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 as fast as I can. I'm going to make sure it's shooting a good group, right? I'm going to do my warm up, and then I'm going to work on moving from one cone to the other, or, you know, transitioning from target to target. And it may just be on a buzzer, I punch up and I'm 1, 2, right? And then I'm going to go up there and I'm going to see where I'm hitting. And then I'm going to repeat. And the whole purpose is that what I'm trying to do is get my shot from, you know, let's say low ready. So low ready is stock on, rifles down, I punch up, boom, boom. I'm just trying to get that time as low as possible with the most accurate shot. And a lot of that sometimes is just going slow. Beep, you're like boom, boom, right? Again, boom, boom. And as you're doing that, you're just naturally ingraining like that perfect practice makes perfect. You're consistently doing that. And before you know it, you start to speed up and you're going to still have the perfect shot, but just moving faster. Once you got that down, now we're going to move into training. But it still comes down to getting into barricades. There's a thing called a VTAG board. They make portable ones. So if you have a car, it goes in there. Shooting off of a portable VPAC or any VTAG board, but shooting off of any type of VTAG board, whether you're shooting long range for hunting, long range for competition, you want to do CQB stuff for like your house, or you just want to do a 3-gun competition or like a 2-gun match, a VTAC board is going to really hone in on those fundamentals of getting a rifle in, putting yourself into an uncomfortable position, getting the rifle out there in that position and start shooting. You're going to start to build up fundamentals across the whole entire board. And the same thing with pistol.
Yeah. If you can't do it slow, you're not going to be able to do it fast.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too. When I first started shooting back in, you know, I don't even know how old I was when I started shooting in Texas, but naturally what we see on TV are people taking beer bottles and cans and they're putting them up on a stump and we're going to go shoot those. but there's so much that goes into that of actually having the proper fundamentals of shooting the AR, right? Like a lot of guys want to get behind their rifle and they got their elbow stuck way out and they're here and they're super squared and they're leaning back. You know, it's just kind of getting in there and just taking all of those things and tightening them up and fixing your entire core and fundamentals of shooting. And just by doing that, you're going to see an improvement in your shooting.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's one of those things that here in the last few years, especially, I've been a lot more deliberate about it and seeking out, because everybody's shooting style is a little bit different. You know, you talk to 10 different shooters, you've got 10 different shooting forms that are going to come up, if not 11 or 12. And finding what works for you, what's comfortable for you, but all of that relies on you finding what's comfortable. And if you're not doing it enough to know what you like and that you don't like, you know, there's all kinds of tips, but there's no substitute for time behind the trigger. And dry fire, I'm sure you've heard those guys too. Well, there's no recoil, there's no sound. Dry fire isn't going to do you any good, but it's that muscle memory. You talk to the real serious operators and the real serious competitive shooters, and for every live round they're sending down range, there's 10 that are dry fired. And that just holds true with anyone that I've ever talked to. That dry fire becomes so important. And you know, we talked about the air gun market has blown up. So too is the training aid market. There's a lot of resources out there for people anymore. I know I don't know if we'll see them here in a couple of weeks. We're getting ready to go to POMA conference. This will actually probably be out about the time POMA is there. But spending time with the Mantis guys the last couple of years at POMA, they did one of the Insiders Club giveaways with us. I bought one of the Mantis X10 units. And I never considered myself much of a pistol shot. And then when COVID hit and when I was living in town, I just couldn't get out to live fire shoot at all. And I started playing around with that X10. And I mean, I literally just watched the scores go up, you know, dedicated time to putting some time on that, and the instant response. And the nice thing about that too is, you know, it's one thing if I pick up the phone and say, hey, Dustin, let's go to the range. You know what you're doing. Watch what I'm doing. You're peeking, you're doing whatever. But so many people they're going to the range and they're shooting because they don't have anybody to go with to train. And maybe they're missing, but they have no way to diagnose. They just know that they're missing. And it's that whole, you've seen the trigger control meme that floats around on Facebook. You know, it's a 360 degree circle. You suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck. There you go. Keep doing that. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's impossible you don't know what you were doing. And those instant response, like with that Mantis, I mean, you're healing. You're too much too much finger, not enough. And that was great.
I travel a lot. Whether I'm shooting competitions or for work, because I also represent JP and some other companies. So I'm on the road a lot, and I spend a lot of time in the hotel room. And I have the Mantis X10, and then I have the Blackbeard system, which is for an AR. Yeah. And I've used the Blackbeard for in my long range rifle in the hotel, where I've got a tripod. So buzzer goes off, I'm throwing the rifle up on the tripod, getting behind target, squeezing the trigger, right? And it's got a green laser shoots out of it on target. Gives me a lot of feedback. Gives me instant feedback. Same thing. I'll put it on my pistol, drop from the holster, punch out, and they all give you scores. And so I do a whole thing on the Mantis system. It's a phenomenal system. I'm a big fan of it. I tell a lot of people to get into that. But let's say you're on a budget, you can't afford Mantis because you're going to put money into your ammo and stuff like that. It's cool because we're all on social media, and everybody out there, I know you guys are posting videos of you doing something. So take your camera, put it on a tripod, put it in front of you, off to the side, draw from your holster with a pistol or punch up with your rifle and take a shot. If you go back and you watch those videos, I promise you're going to watch a video and be like, what am I doing? Even if you don't know anything about a firearm, when you shoot and you see your head pop up, you'll be like, that's not right. It's a phenomenal training platform. And there are people out there now that you can send them your video and they will critique your video. They'll critique your shooting and send it back to get you up on a Zoom call and be like, hey, you need to work on X, Y, and Z. The problem I think is actually out there is the training, actually going out and training with people. So every year I try to do at least 1 to 2 training classes where I go train with somebody else. Next year, my goal is to probably next year I want to do about 5 to 7 factory tours and spend like a week at these factories and learn a lot more about firearms. On top of that, I want to do 5 to 7 classes, just all training classes. So there's a guy down in Georgia. I want to go down there, and it's a week long, 2,000 rounds of pistol, right? You show up there, you leave your ego at the door because you're 100% there to learn from an expert. And so next year, my goal is to go do all these training classes so I can continuously improve my shooting. And then I can take some of that and work with other people when I'm at the range and I see somebody punching out. Maybe I can learn and be able to pass that knowledge on so we can continually increase our performance with firearms, whether pistol, rifle, shotgun, whatever it is.
Yeah, when we were talking about peaking, that I was going to mention it then, and I use it. I use it more for my bow than I do my guns, and that's my own fault. We're all carrying around iPhones or Androids, and every one of them has slow-mo video capabilities now. Just 1 or 2 videos, and like I said, even if you don't have, I've been in the industry long enough that I can just text a couple people, hey, what's this look like? Just send it. For people that don't have that resource, whether it's local social media or, just the people that you follow, if there's one thing that people really should understand about this industry is there are so many passionate people that want you to be doing better. Like I got my hands on a Blackbeard in the Laser Academy earlier this year too. I've had the X10 for a while and just got the Blackbeard in. Agreed. Like that. And for the people that say you can't afford it, but then have you looked at the price of ammo lately? Like just since I got the Blackbeard, it retails, I think it's like around $250, something like that. It's expensive, but it's not crazy. You can't buy 500 rounds of ammunition for that, but you can train for thousands of rounds of ammunition by making that investment. And that's what it is. It's an investment, but reach out to people and find those folks because they will. There's no shortage of people in this industry that know what they're doing to be able to run a video by and say, hey, can you take a look at this? Am I doing something silly?
Yeah. I have people all the time on social media, don't know them. They'll send me a message. Hey, you shoot a lot. Can I follow you and you're talking about this. Can you just watch this? And they send me video. And feel free anytime, at 2A Dustin, just shoot me a video over. When I have time, I'll sit back and watch it, and I'll send it. If I lean to a different angle, I'll send it back to you. But honestly, what made my shooting overall much better was when I went full send into archery. And then I was like, I started to learn so much on the peeking and the follow through with my bow, that whenever I got behind my pistol, that was the first thing I noticed. As soon as I got behind my pistol after shooting bow for like 6 months straight, got behind my pistol, and my pistol was so much better. It got super tight. So I do a drill called the dot drill. So when I show up to the range, I'll take out my first, target, put it up there, and I've got little 1-inch squares, and I'll shoot 5 shots at 3 yards, 5 shots at 5 yards, 5 shots at 7 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards, right? And what I'm doing is when you're shooting that up close, right, you're stacking everything on that 1 inch, like all 3 shots at 3 yards are all on there. As you go back, you start to notice your group opens up if you don't have the proper fundamental. Now, what's intimidating behind it is people go farther back and they're like, oh, that target's so small. That target's still a 1-inch target, right? So it shouldn't matter if I'm at 12 yards or 3 yards. The target size hasn't changed. What's changed is my fundamentals. Up close, I can get away with being a little sloppier, but at 12 yards, I cannot. So by doing that, and if you went to the range and you did nothing but dot drills for 100 rounds, you just took your time, even if you just wanted to do 2 shots at 3, 2 shots at 5, 2 shots at 7, you're going to notice by the end of the day how your shots have gotten a lot tighter and a lot closer. So the next time you actually go to the range and then you just start shooting, you're going to notice you're shooting better groups. So I start my day with a dot drill, then I'll do whatever drills I want, and I will save at least 10 rounds to do my dot drill at the end. So I leave on the dot drill fundamentals, or I start on fundamentals and I end on fundamentals. Now, sometimes at the end of the day, you're a little sloppier. And some people are like, well, you never want to leave on a negative. If I leave on a negative, I've turned it into a positive. Okay, what is it that I need to focus on to make myself even better? So then I go home and that's what I focus on for dry fire, because so the positive of that is it gave me something to work on. Right.
Yeah.
If I ended my session, my dot drill, everything's great. Well, now I have to search for something I did in my live
Right.
fire that wasn't, or that during my actual drills I wasn't happy with. So there's always a way to find some kind of training through video, dot drills, dry fire, anything like that, and turn it into a positive for training.
Well, and that I think we'll kind of bookend that portion there with shooting is fine, but make sure you're taking time to train too. There's a difference between shooting and training. And I think a lot of people do the former and they're not really focusing on the latter. But like I said, we could go down that rabbit hole for about another hour, and I don't know if anybody else would want to listen. But so aside from all of that, that was the competitive shooting side. But you're also marketing manager at Real Avid, and I've been following the Real Avid guys for years. I've been a fan of Real Avid. Tell folks first of all a little bit about what Real Avid does and some of the products that they have available, but then also kind of roll that into, and I'll ask the follow-up right ahead of time. And it's something I've focused on here more, is becoming my own gunsmith. And you kind of touched on it as we're talking about training, understanding my firearm, being able to fix field repairs, just good general maintenance of being your own gunsmith. I think a lot of people get intimidated, so they look at a brand like Real Avid and they're like, I don't know if I need that stuff. But I think it's really important that folks understand why they do. So if you can answer all those questions all at once, since I asked all of them up front to make it easy on you.
I got you. So Real Avid is the leader in DIY. So do it yourself. So you want to build an AR, we've got a vise here that's been 360 degrees, and it's got a torque lock pin, so I can actually lock it in, and it'll handle up to 100 foot-pounds of torque, to crow's foot wrenches and everything I need to install barrels and muzzle devices, my castle nut on my buffer tube, to, let's say I just got a pistol and I want to do some quick maintenance on my pistol, or I want to change out trigger spring. We make the tools to do a lot of that stuff because when we look at going to a gunsmith, and I love gunsmiths, they went to school for this, and I would love to support them. But sometimes changing our own sights on a pistol is something I can do at home. I've got 5 pistols, let's say, and I want to change 5 sights on there, and I drop, let's just say $120 per sight. Now I've got to go pay this gunsmith to put them all in. We make a master sight pusher that will do all of that, right? So you can put your pistols in there. We talk about, I've got educational videos out there, and I'm talking to you how to push the sight out. You put a new sight in, push it in, zero, and then you can go to the range and shoot, and you have brand new sights. Well, a lot of it just comes down to is the more you play with your pistol, your rifle, your shotgun, the more you start to understand its capabilities. You start to understand when I'm at the range and I have a malfunction. Is it the ammo? Is it my rifle? Is it my shotgun, my pistol? My sights are off. Can I adjust my sights, or do I need to go see a gunsmith? So in that realm, doing it yourself is very important, so you can make sure that your firearm is doing 100% what it needs to be doing when ultimately, God forbid anybody has to go through it, but when that time actually matters, right? But if, let's say, cleaning a rifle, that's still very important. My rifle, I'm looking for groups open up. Whenever I need to, like if I'm shooting it and I start to see that my rifle's shooting a bigger group, that means 2 things, or 3 things. Bad ammo, dirty barrel, or my barrel shot out. For most of the people, you're not going to shoot out your barrel. So you're looking at ammo, and then you're looking at cleaning. Well, it's pretty hard to go buy another thing of ammo and come back and shoot that and see what it's doing. So the first thing you want to do is give your barrel a nice barrel scrub. So we came out with our new patches and jags that are actually caliber specific. So they're a lot tighter, so smaller tolerances. And they actually do a very thorough barrel scrub. They're actually nickel plated. Our brushes are nickel plated. So that way the solvent that's in there, when you run brass through there, it likes to leave like a bluish coating. So you can push the patch through there and it constantly looks like your barrel's dirty. So the nickel plating allows you to actually know when your barrel's clean by pushing the patches through there. But it gives you a very thorough barrel scrub. So, clean that barrel, run some rounds through it, and you're going to see that your groups are actually going to be tighter because the barrel, the projectile actually needs to catch the lanes and grooves through the rifle, and that's what project it down range at a very specific or accurate. There we go. Makes it accurate. So a lot of things like that are important, and just even if you don't want to work on it, just keeping your firearm clean is super important for accuracy and just fundamentals of the rifle or pistol, whatever it is, just to continuously run.
No, it's clean, keeping those guns clean. It seems so simple, but
and that's why it's so hard for me to be like, yeah, you need to clean your rifle. People are like, well, I'm like, look, it's just one of those things that nobody likes to do it, but it is very important. With this rifle behind me, I honestly, it's a competition rifle. I clean it at around 600 rounds because I understand that's when the group starts open. However, maintaining my rifle and cleaning my rifle in my head are two different things. I keep my bolt and my buffer system that's in there. I keep them, I run a JPSES in there, so I keep oil on my buffer system. On my bolt, I keep my bolt wet. ARs like to run wet. They don't ever like to be dry. So I keep those wet. But as far as cleaning the barrel, I know that my group opens up around 600 yards. So I don't do anything, or 600 rounds. So I don't clean that barrel at that part, but maintaining the rifle, which some people would still consider cleaning, I still do. I still keep, every time I go to the range, I check my bolt. All right, my bolt needs a little bit of oil. I throw some oil on there. That's where CLP, which is clean, lubricate, protect. That's where CLP comes in, is for the guys that are wanting to just maintain, keep everything wet, keep it running. My bolt action rifle, I treat it differently. I use some oil wipes and I just wipe the bolt down. Then I go to the range and I shoot it. That barrel opens up at 400 rounds, right? I'm going to shoot. And what I mean by open up is like, I need it to shoot a smaller than a 1-inch group at 100 yards. If it's not doing that, then the barrel's starting to open up. And that means that, hey, I need to clean it, or I've got some bad ammo. So those are things that I do. I keep a lot of stuff wet, but I don't scrub my barrels down until I start to see that pattern open up. The only way you can get to that is actually knowing what your rifle does.
Right.
By shooting it, right? But those are just things that you just got to do it. You got to keep your stuff clean. My everyday carry pistol, I clean it. I go to the range, I shoot it, I clean it. It's my everyday carry pistol. That to me is very important. I have 4 daughters, right? So 4 daughters, my wife. If anything ever happens, I need to know that my everyday carry pistol is going to do its job every time, 100% of the time. Don't want it. Don't ever want to have to use it, but it is something that I maintain and keep clean just for that instance.
Well, and you can draw the analogy to like classic cars. The best thing you can do for a gun is get out and use it, regardless of what it is. But if you're getting out and use it, and then you just take it back and you park it in the safe, and it sits there for 4 months, and it never got ran and it never got cleaned, that's where you really start to run into the problems too. Is if you're going to be running it fairly consistently. I mean, how often are you shooting? What's the longest your competition rifle goes without being shot, especially this time of year?
This one, it will be without being shot.
Yeah. What's the longest it sits between being shot this time of year?
3 days.
Right. 36 hours. So,
yeah.
if you're not even running a bore brush down it between, big deal. It's not having time to sit there and crystallize and get disgusting. And you're, like I said, you're running them wet. And so there's a million things that factor in there. But even, the classic car guys, they'll tell you, you don't leave a classic car sit with oil in it. They drain the oil. And even if it's not getting driven, you still have to maintain it. And you're not going to run it to the drag strip for the weekend, gum it up, open those valves up and get it breathing, and then just take it back and park it and let it sit for 6 months and not do anything with it. That's the worst thing you can do for it.
I saw last year a guy, he had a 300 Win Mag, brand new. And he's like, I'm going to do the barrel breaking. I'm going to do everything. I'm like, sweet. So I went to the range with him, felt sorry for him for shooting that thing because it kicked like a mule. And like, he started to flinch, and I was like, well, you're flinching now. You're literally, everything you want to do with this rifle besides barrel breaking is done because you're flinching so bad.
Right.
It's just horrible practice. But he actually took a mule deer and an elk. Awesome. He came back and he put it in a safe. Didn't touch it. So a couple of weeks back, he's like, hey, let's go shoot my rifle. We go shoot his rifle, and I shoot like a 2-inch group at 100 yards. He's like, I don't know what's wrong with this thing. And I'm like, well, did you clean it? Well, I didn't. I only put like 4 rounds through it after I broke it in. I'm like, so you didn't clean it? He's like, nope. And I'm like, and you were hunting in the rain in Colorado last year, right? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, Awesome.
I think
Well,
we've isolated the problem.
100%, right? So you just, well, I wiped it down. I'm like, well, I can tell you wiped it down because there's no rust on it.
Right.
But it came back to, he got done shooting. Dude, the chemicals that are, just the chemical mess that happens when powder is burnt and the fouling that happens inside of a barrel just from one round going down that barrel is enough to destroy a barrel if it sits for long periods of time. So you get done shooting, you need to run a rod through it, okay? Like put some oil on it, run a rod through it, at least keep oil inside. So if you're not gonna do a thorough barrel clean, keep some oil on those lands and grooves. So when you do decide to shoot that rifle in a year from now, it's still gonna shoot good and you didn't just waste all this money on the rifle and now you got to put a new barrel in it because it's actually trash.
And we're going to take it to the next. That was, I'm guessing, not a decent hunting rifle shooting good hunting ammunition. Now let's take just an entry level AR that somebody bought and they went and got 500 rounds of Russian imported steel case, dirty steel case ammo, put 150 rounds through it the first time they went to the range, brought it home, put it in the safe and let it sit there for 3 months. You think that hunting rifle had problems? You might have welded that bolt shut with all the crap that you left in that type of so it seems so simple. Keep your gun clean.
Yeah.
And yet
it does. Look, I went hunting, when we were kids, we go hunting. And I remember my cousin, we went hunting and the next year, this was before I knew anything about rifles. The next year, we pull out our hunting rifles and we're all shooting. And then we hear this loud explosion and we turn around and his barrel is like in 3 different pieces at the end. And it's in a couple of different spots. And nobody can figure out what happened. And the only thing we can guess is that year when he came out of his deer stand, the last day it had actually been raining. And he always runs with his barrel slung to the ground. The only thing we think about is when he came out of the tree stand, it went into the mud, got some mud caked up in there. He wiped it down, but he never put a rod or anything through it. So his first shot hit that mud. It blew up on him. Look, there's a lot of reasons why we can say it's important, but look, we put a lot of money into your firearms, from an optic to the actual rifle. And when we expect them to go hunting and I want to, smoke a coyote at 150 yards, I expect it to hit the coyote at 150 yards, right?
Right.
Not have to track the coyote down. And a lot of it comes down to just guys not understanding their firearm, not putting the time back into that firearm that it deserves. And you see a lot of people like, well, hey man, I shot this buck and I promise I was aiming right here and something happened.
Right.
Something happened and I didn't get the shot that I needed. And you're like, I bet if we really got into this, you zeroed at like a different altitude probably, because I've seen that happen where a guy zeroes at 900 feet, elevation, and then he goes up to Colorado and at 6,000 feet above, sea level, and his zero is completely different. He didn't zero it, takes a 500-yard shot, has no idea why he, shot 4 inches below the heart, and he's got to go track this animal down and probably never found it. It's just putting time into your setup. You're going to spend $7,000 on a hunt. I think spending, 7 minutes at the range, really getting to understand what that rifle does. If that's all you got, just go do it.
Agreed. So we'll start to wrap it up here. What's the latest from Real Avid? I think you kind of touched on a couple things, but what's the latest and greatest from the wonderful minds over there at Real Avid?
Yeah. Well, we came out with a lot of cool stuff at SHOT Show. So we got our buys. We've got a AMK Pro, which is our Armor's Master Kit Pro for the AR guys. We have a laser bore sighter now that is actually runs a green laser, so it's very daylight friendly. So it's great. Takes 2 AA batteries on the bottom or AAA batteries on the bottom, and it's just a little push button at the front. It gives you a little green laser. This thing's cool. It's magnetic, so it goes on the end of your barrel. It's just for bore sighting. So if you want to get on paper faster, so you are running a 300 Win Mag and you don't want to put too many shots, throw that on at 25 yards. Now your optic close to the bore sighter, take it off, take a shot. You'll be within, I think we're running a 4 MOA on that. So you'll be within 4 MOA on your paper, and then you can easily zero in from there.
Great.
We got a lot of cool stuff coming that I can't talk about yet, but I'm very excited about
Nice.
the progression that we're continuously making here at Real Avid. Big thing is we do have, we have our own entire line of chemicals. And when I say that, a lot of people are like, so you relabel. We did not relabel. We have a guy, I call him the Mad Hatter, the Mad Scientist, whatever you want to call him. He loves chemicals, and like this guy has told me how to make some really cool stuff that I can't repeat on this Zoom call that I can go home and play with. But he designed our entire line of chemicals, and we've got a salt tester out here, it's pressurized and fully contained, and we can throw different like metals in there, like barrels. We'll put different coatings of oil on there and we'll run them, and we're actually outperforming all the lead brands out there. So our CLP is awesome. It works in -17 all the way up to 100+ degrees. I've ran it in all those different temperatures through ARs and bolt guns. A lot of people like CLP, so it's great. Cool thing about it is I can spray in this spot position here, or it has a straw that I can open all the way up and spray
Nice.
there for more fine stuff. So big fan of our CLP. Our laser bore sighter has been pretty awesome. It does work on pistols as well. But yeah, I mean, really, like if we're looking at hunting, the biggest thing I'd say is that we came out with, we have a Level Right Pro, which uses the barrel or the rifle in the optic as a level plane. So it actually goes on top of the barrel in the rifle and has one bubble level, and then has a projector, which is a flashlight that shines through it backwards onto a grid. So I can actually zero everything and zero my rifle.
Nice.
Or zero my optic or level my optic very fast. We started putting that in a kit where it comes with our Smart Torque, which is a torque driver that goes from 10 to 70 inch-pounds, and it does 1 inch-pound increments at a time.
Love mine. Love mine. Picked that up at the Aglow auction last year. Love it. Love it. Love it.
And then, we put it in a kit too with the Bismack. So, hunting, if you're wanting that like be able to level an optic super fast and easy and get on paper fast, we've got a master grade combo or master grade leveling kit with a laser bore sighter. Works phenomenal for that. And it's just, quick, easy. It's one package. You pull it out. It's got everything you need in there to make sure your deer hunting rifle is ready to go. If you've got Picatinny and you've got an AR and you want to hunt with an AR, then it'll work on Picatinny as well. So barrel or Picatinny mount. Phenomenal. But it all goes back to this vise here. Like I said, you saw it. I think you wrote an article on it.
Yep. We included it in the best things we saw at ATA and SHOT Show. Yep.
Yeah. So moves 360 degrees. I have built at this point now, I've built over 60 ARs on it. I've built a couple of different chassis guns, bolt guns on there. It's great for whenever I want to change out my trigger on a bolt gun. It'll work on barrels, Picatinny, Arca Swiss. If you've got this like your little tack rail on a shotgun or a pistol, it holds that. We've got the soft jaws for shotgun guys, or the really nice wooden stock. You don't have to worry about that. But like I said, it's been 360 degrees. You can drop it down. I have a pin in here that I can actually lock into place and torque it down in that position. Now it'll hold 100 foot or up to 100 foot-pounds of torque. There's nothing else on the market that will spin 360 degrees and still handle up to that amount of torque. So for firearms, but my daughter is now using it to do some of her arts and crafts stuff, because I can put it in this position. I can put her little strings or whatever in there. It works great for that. I've worked on my bow with one. I've done, some wood, like some wood stuff on there, some little wood projects. So it's just a great vise that I think everybody should have in their house, from to work on bicycles, skateboards, whatever it is. You got kids, you need a vise.
You're going to need it for something. Agreed.
Exactly.
Definitely going to need it for something. Great.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish it up.
I was just going to say, for everybody who likes playing with cameras, I've mounted my camera on there too and shot it back onto my desk so I could build stuff. So.
Perfect. Well, Dustin, appreciate you jumping on with us today. We covered a lot of ground. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Obviously want people to be able to find you, want them to be able to find Real Avid. Where can they do that?
Yeah. So Real Avid is just at Real Avid on Instagram. You can also email me at, and maybe you can put this link or something, but if you have any questions, just give me my direct email. It's dsanchez@realavid.com. You have any questions on our products, or you just question on a firearm, whatever, shoot me an email there that goes directly to my cell phone and I can answer that. Me personally, I'm at 2A Dustin on Instagram. Don't post too much stuff on there because I'm busy posting for other companies. But yeah, shoot me up if you got a video, you want me to watch a video, you want to just talk to me about firearms, you want to talk to me about any product, hit me up on any of those social media platforms or shoot me an email over at my email and I'll get to you as soon as I can.
Dustin, it's a pleasure. Appreciate it. Wealth of knowledge every time I talk to you. Great. And we'll see you soon out at POMA conference. I'm looking forward to that. So again, everybody, it's Real Avid. I've been using them forever. I'm a huge fan of the Real Avid products for whatever that is to everybody listening. But thanks for listening to the SPYPOINT podcast. Invite you to rate, review, subscribe wherever it is you're consuming podcasts. Help other people find the information. Any feedback that you've got, reach out to us at SPYPOINT Camera on all social media platforms, and we'll do what we can to get back to you. So thanks everybody for joining us. Have a good day. Thanks, Dustin.